Shortly after sunset, on a mountainside in the far south of Arizona, a jaguar climbed up out of the desert to get a drink. He was a big male, breathing heavily in the cooling twilight air, and he had come up one of the region's sky islands, the isolated forested peaks that rise like green ships out of a beige sea of desert, to reach a watering hole. He did not know that a camera was strapped to the base of a small tree a few feet away, and that it was recording him. The footage, captured in early 2026, shows an animal that has no business being there according to almost every map of where jaguars live. A 200-pound apex predator, the largest cat in the Americas, standing at a desert spring inside the United States. The scientists who pulled the card from that camera gave him a name that was really a number. They called him Cinco, Jaguar number 5, because in 15 years of continuously watching these mountains for jaguars, he was only the 5th one they had ever found. He had wandered north across the border from Mexico into a country that, for all practical purposes, no longer has jaguars, and his arrival was not a fluke. It was the clearest sign yet that one of the most remarkable comebacks in North American wildlife may be quietly underway. The return of a great cat that the United States wiped out a century ago and has spent the years since pretending was never really ours. It would mean less if Cinco were the only one. He is part of a surge. Since August of 2025, scientists at the University of Arizona have confirmed 7 separate jaguar detections in the southern part of the state. For decades, a jaguar in the United States was a once-in-a-several-years event, a single cat photographed and then gone. Now they are appearing again and again, pushing north into the mountains of Arizona and New Mexico, into ranges where their kind was hunted out generations ago. They follow a short list of names that big cat researchers in the borderlands speak almost reverently. Macho B, the famous old male who died in 2009. El Jefe, the boss, who roamed the Santa Rita Mountains for years. Oko, killed by poachers in 2018. Sombra, and now Cinco. Each one a confirmation that the jaguar has not finished with the United States, even if the United States once tried very hard to finish with it. This is the space the whole story lives in. The jaguars are real, documented, photographed, undeniable. But every single one recorded in the United States in the past 20 years has been the same thing. A lone male. Not a population, not a family, not breeding. The entire question of whether the jaguar truly returns to America comes down to one event that has not happened in more than 100 years, and the cats that keep crossing the border are tantalizingly close to it and not quite there. To understand why their return matters, you have to throw out the thing most people assume about the jaguar. Panthera onca is the 3rd largest cat on Earth, behind only the lion and the tiger, the largest cat in the Western Hemisphere, and the only true big cat that lives in the Americas at all. And it is not, as nearly everyone believes, a purely tropical animal that has strayed too far north when it turns up in Arizona. The jaguar is a native of the American Southwest. Until roughly 200 years ago, jaguars prowled the land that would become Los Angeles, Albuquerque, Boulder, and Houston. The oldest known jaguar fossil on Earth, around 850,000 years old, was pulled from a cave in Virginia. During the Ice Age, jaguars larger than the ones alive today ranged across much of the continent. When a jaguar walks into Arizona, it is not wandering somewhere strange. It is walking back into a piece of its own ancient kingdom. And it really did live here, not just pass through. Researchers compiling the historical record have confirmed more than 80 verified jaguar records across southern Arizona spanning 160 years, drawn from museum specimens, old newspaper clippings, field notes, and hunting trophies. Crucially, some of those records from before 1920 are of females and of young animals, which means jaguars were almost certainly breeding in Arizona within the last century or so. Then, the same machinery that destroyed the wolf and the grizzly came for the jaguar too. Ranchers, hunters, bounties, and federal predator control ground the population down. The last known female jaguar in the United States was shot by a hunter in Arizona's White Mountains in 1963. The last documented litter of jaguar kittens on American soil was born more than 100 years ago, around 1910. By the end of the 20th century, the American jaguar had become a phantom, a single male drifting across the border every few years, if that. The reason they are coming back now lies just on the other side of the line. In the Sierra Madre of eastern Sonora, Mexico, roughly 150 miles south of the border, a jaguar population is recovering. Since 2002, a group called the Northern Jaguar Project has run a reserve of 56,000 acres in those mountains, and it has done something quietly radical. It has convinced the local ranchers that a living jaguar is worth more than a dead one, paying them to protect the cats instead of shooting them. Today, around a dozen jaguars live in or near that reserve, the northernmost breeding jaguars on the planet, and a recovering population does what all big cat populations do. Its young males disperse. They ramble across enormous distances, sometimes hundreds of square miles, searching for unclaimed territory and mates, and the natural path north leads them sky island to sky island, up through Sonora and across the border into Arizona. Cinco and the cats before him are the leading edge of that recovering Mexican population, pressing against the top of the jaguar's range, testing the old ground. The jaguar named El Jefe is the proof of just how possible this is, and how invisible. He was first photographed in Arizona in 2011, lived in the Santa Rita Mountains for years, and then in 2015, he simply vanished. For 6 years, no one knew if he was alive or dead. Then, in 2021, a trail camera in Sonora caught his face, and researchers matched him by the unique pattern of his rosettes with total certainty. He had crossed back into Mexico and lived undetected for the better part of a decade, an animal the size of a small couch, completely invisible until a camera happened to catch him. But El Jefe was a male, and males are the easy part. The hard part, the thing that would change everything, is a female. Because a single female who crosses the border and stays is the difference between a parade of lonely visitors and an actual breeding population. The history says it can happen, since females lived here before 1920. The biology says it can happen, and one researcher put it plainly: it may well be within our lifetime that a female makes it across, if we allow her to. In Argentina, a rewilding group took a region that had 0 jaguars and, in just a few years, built a wild breeding population of more than 35 of them. The United States is closer to having jaguars again than it has been in a century. The strangest part of all this is how an animal that large stays hidden, and the answer is the same as it has always been. Jaguars are reclusive and nocturnal, and they move through some of the most rugged and least visited country in North America, the canyon mazes and forested peaks of the borderlands where almost no person ever goes. Cinco was seen for one reason only. A camera had been sitting at that one watering hole for 15 years, waiting. And there is a haunting detail in his discovery. He appeared at the exact spot where a different jaguar had been detected years before. Site fidelity, the scientists call it, the same secret crossings and the same hidden springs used over and over across generations of cats. The jaguars are threading invisible corridors through the mountains, and we glimpse them only when a camera happens to be standing in the right canyon at the right moment. For every jaguar caught on film, the crossings we never photograph leave no trace at all, which brings the story to its hard edge, because the real objection here is not whether jaguars are coming back. It is whether they will ever be allowed to be anything more than visitors. And the threat to that is a wall. Right now, the United States government is building 222 miles of new barriers along stretches of the southern border, including 30-foot steel bollards through the exact mountain corridors that jaguars use to move between Mexico and Arizona. Wildlife biologists are blunt about what this means. A jaguar will not cross a wall 26 to 30 feet high, even if it could physically manage it. The honest shape of the problem has 3 parts. The cats move undetected right up until a barrier stops them, and a barrier of that height stops them completely. The obstacle is not the land, which still has room and prey enough to hold jaguars, but a political decision laid in steel and concrete. And a wall does not only block the next jaguar from coming, It severs the few males already in Arizona from the breeding population in Sonora, cutting the thread that connects them and ensuring that no female ever joins them. Experts have said it without hedging. Complete the wall across these corridors, and the chance of a breeding jaguar population in the United States drops to essentially zero. Honesty requires laying out the rest of it plainly. There is no breeding population of jaguars in the United States, and there has not been one for over a century. Every jaguar documented north of the border for the last 20 years has been a lone male, and not one confirmed female has been found. More than 99% of all the jaguars on Earth live in Central and South America. The United States is a thin scrap at the very edge of the species range, not a stronghold. The recent surge, exciting as it is, still amounts to 7 detections, possibly of only a few individual cats, not a wave. The federal government has stated it has no plans to reintroduce jaguars to the United States. And jaguars do occasionally kill livestock, which is part of why ranchers shot them in the first place and part of why their return is resisted. The comeback is genuine, but it is fragile. It is a handful of animals, and it could be cut off at any time. Because the real claim is narrower and far more urgent than a triumphant return. The science does not say the jaguar has retaken the Southwest. It says that a native predator, erased from the American Southwest within the last century, is walking back across the border one cat at a time into mountains its kind held for thousands of years, and that for the first time in over 100 years, the United States is genuinely close to having breeding jaguars again. Cinco is not a stray that took a wrong turn. He is a signal. The door is still open. The cats still remember the way through it, and whether America ever gets its great spotted cat back depends almost entirely on one thing: whether we keep that door open or wall it shut while the chance is still in front of us. So it ends where it began, at a desert spring at twilight with a jaguar and a camera he never noticed. Cinco drank his fill and walked back into the dark, into a country that does not quite have jaguars and does not quite not have them. Somewhere to the south of him, a female may already be moving north through the canyons of the Sierra Madre. Somewhere ahead of him, a wall is rising across the very ground his ancestors crossed for 10,000 years. The cat that climbed that mountain for a drink of water is the northernmost jaguar on Earth, the leading edge of an animal trying to find its way home. Whether he turns out to be the last of a vanishing visitor or the first of a returning native is a question whose answer has not been written yet. And for once, the answer belongs entirely to us.